Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone. So happy that you're here. It is LGBTQ History Month, and all month, the Read with Jules Book Club has been celebrating the stories of both allies and members of our LGBTQ community. And today, I am very excited to announce to you that we will be talking with Matthew Paul Turner, and he is here. Hello!
Hi.
Oh my goodness! I'm lowering my chair. Watch me go. Hi!
How are you?
I'm so wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. It is a gorgeous day here, so I have enjoyed it tremendously.
You're in Nashville, right?
Yeah, I am.
I am too. I
I
just
I can't
relocated
believe
here.
we've not met in person. Like I
I
can't
know, I
believe
cannot believe it.
crazy.
I'll
So
probably
we
see
have
you
we
at
have to
Whole
remedy that.
Foods. Yeah, I know. I am so excited that you're here, and I have to tell everyone, first of all, welcome.
Oh,
Thank you for being here. This is Matthew Paul Turner. He is an author, a New York Times bestseller.
yeah,
That's
great.
amazing. Congratulations. And so I knew about you because you're a children's book writer.
Mhm.
And I have one right here that I
Yeah.
love so much. So I've been reading your books to my kids for years. And then you,
No way. Wow.
yes, yes,
That's
I have. I have three children, and
yeah.
they're always so beautiful, and you're so poetic, and I love your books. I love the way that you write. But you sent me an advanced copy of a book last year,
Yeah.
and you wrote in it to me, and you said, "So this is the first book I've released since coming out as gay." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, there's so much more to the story." And I love
Yeah.
it. And I am so thrilled that you agreed, it being LGBTQ History Month. I think it's so important for us to be talking and hearing stories from both allies and members of our LGBTQ community. So thank you for being here. And you're celebrating your 1 year, right, of
Yeah,
coming out?
it's been. I came out July 17th, or publicly anyway, July 17th, 2020. So it's a little bit over a year. It's and I'm still learning this. I'm still learning how to do this well, how to listen well. I mean, I'm still
Mm.
like seeking wisdom from people who have been out for much longer than me, who have, done been a part of the story for a lot longer than me, or been out a lot longer than me, and and have been advocating on behalf of LGBTQ people for 10, 20 years. And they are they are the brave souls who have taught me more than I have taught me a lot, and have made it possible for people like me to come out, and
Mm.
and it's to be less hard than it used to be, or for it to be a lot more positive in many ways. So, but yeah,
Yes.
1 year.
Courage breeds courage. It's
Right.
like they paved the way for you, which is why it's so vital that you're here and that you're telling your truth. So you grew up in a fundamentalist Baptist community,
Yeah,
is that
I was
correct?
independent fundamental Baptist church. Like,
Okay.
I had like one thing that I tell people, that I had a Barbie burned in front of me to explain hell by a Sunday school teacher. I went to Yeah, like, I mean,
Okay, but wait, you can't just like skip over that.
yeah,
They
no,
burned Barbie? Like the
yeah,
act, like a
well,
Barbie
well,
doll?
it was a cheap imitation.
Oh, the cheap
Yeah,
Barbie. That's
yeah, so it was a dollar store version, but it was still it was a traumatic thing. And but my parents, I've always belonged to church. My parents were Methodists when I was born. And when I was 4, they got talked into starting a low-key cult that was, a small town church that turned into the biggest church in our area over time. And, I went to the school that was associated with the church.
Okay.
It was not just church. It was my whole life changed. One day my mom could wear pants and we could go to the movie theater. The next, a week later, my mom no longer wore pants. She literally put them all in a bag and put them in a trash bag and threw them away. And we weren't allowed to go see movies at the theater anymore. And everything changed. Everything. Now, I don't remember the before all that much, but I certainly was. I was definitely a part of what happened after. And I think that because I was the feeler in the family, it affected me. It impacted me more, I think, well, at least I'm the one that walked away from it. And so I can see how it impacted me. I'm not sure the rest of my family would be able to see it, honestly. It has impacted them too. They just have a different perspective.
Isn't that interesting that you say I'm the feeler, so it has impacted me possibly greater? Like, isn't that one of the ways in which religion kind of mutes us? Is that don't feel, don't question, don't doubt, stay silent, don't listen to your heart, don't listen to your yearning. But you were feeling all of those things, which wasn't a sign of weakness, which is how they would probably categorize it. But
I would have been seen as a troublemaker.
right.
And I watched and even though my mom and I would disagree on many things now, back then my mom was not. She was not easily put in her place. Like, my mom spoke up. My mom fought on behalf of her kids. Like when when people were mistreated, like it. So it was funny because like my mom was constantly running into that, and over time, I guess it just whittled away at that spirit that she went into everything with, and she stopped speaking up. And so I kind of get it, honestly, in the sense of just being that one person who's willing to say something. And it's, since being on social media, it's like I've gotten into a whole bunch of trouble from people, in certain circles, because of the people I stood up for, or because of the issues I challenged, or because of all, just a variety of things. And it's when I start, I guess I think my Jessica, my one-time wife, my ex-wife, and we were probably one of, like, I don't know, 80 people in Tennessee to vote against the marriage amendment in 2006, and writing about that. And I received an onslaught of just commentary from people. How could you? And at that point, I was just like, you know what? Why would I ever vote against people?
Right.
Like, what is the point? Like, what's the point of voting against people? And I think that is as so many other people have said, we people of faith are so much more well known for what they stand against than the love and the hope and the light they stand for. And I think that because in the end of the day, so much of what we believe, or how we believe it, so often isn't hope.
Right.
It actually is a news that is not so great. That, and I think our spirit picks up on that. I mean, I think over time, our spirit, even those who aren't feelers, I think you pick up on this idea that the negativity of the average Baptist good news, quote unquote. So anyway, you please interrupt me.
No, are you kidding? That's why you're here. I want to hear your story. But I think you're so right. Like I can imagine you as a little boy sitting in the pew with your mom next to you, and you're like trying to not listen to whatever poison is coming down at you about the LGBTQ community, and you're picking your fingers and you're doodling, like just trying to get ourselves away from it. And I think about us as, well, myself as a mother and your mom, not to speak on her behalf, but and every mom, any dad, any mom or dad, anyone who has a child, we need to think hard. If our butts are in the pew or in an institution that is asking us that if your child comes out as part of the queer community, you're going to have to choose between loving your child and loving your theology. If any institution asks us to choose between loving a child or loving another individual and the allegiance to our theology, we better think long and hard about that.
And the thing that I have found is that when you are, the biggest challenge for me since coming out has been the relationship with my own family, my three sisters, their families, and my mom and dad. And honestly, like the hardest part of this whole process was actually coming out to them. I think somewhere in the middle of all this, I realized that my family was more than my theology, more than, the fear of anything that I believed about God at any point. Like just telling my mom and dad created this overwhelming fear in my person, because I grew up in a church that when you disappoint your parents,
Mm-hmm.
that's the big thing. Like it's a big deal. And of course, over time, it probably became emotionalized and dramatized in my own mind. And so telling them was the hardest part. It was easier telling a whole bunch of millions of strangers or whatever,
Right.
than it was my mom and dad.
Right.
And and everything, my whole relationship, like, I was the kid that, prior to getting married, when I was still single, I was the kid who literally would call my mom twice a day. Like I'd call her in the morning, I'd call her at night. Well, that changed a bit, even when Jessica and I were married. But to be the kid who I don't even have the freedom or the wherewithal to pick up the phone and call my mom right now, where it would, like, even just me saying that out loud creates this fear and sadness in me. It's hard. It's a hard place to be. And so, but my parents, when you believe with all your heart that you have God on your side,
Right.
You can't combat it. Like,
Right.
there's, the few things that they have said to me, they have, it has been so certain. Like, there's no wiggle room. And so, like, there's even, you can't even squeeze in grace when there's no wiggle room. When there's so much certainty about what you believe is right and wrong, or what you believe God thinks about this, or whatever. Like, there is I have had to work on letting go of any responsibility to feel obligated to change their minds about who I am. I am learning right now how to not be connected to their thinking of me and connect that to my thinking of me.
Yes.
That has been my, the biggest challenge for me personally since this whole thing came out, because honestly, Yes, when I first announced it, I got a whole bunch of terrible messages. I got called all the names. I mean, I called
Mm-hmm.
sodomite more than I ever thought. I didn't realize people still utilize that word with such intention. But like, I got, but they were all strangers
Right.
for the most part. People who know my work, and for people who like love my books or whatever, like they have I received an overwhelming amount of support and kindness that like it has
Mm.
been it shocked me, because I think in my head I expected the absolute very worst.
Right.
And so when that doesn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden like you see this, like it is a like I mean honestly I was I, took me a minute to actually sit back and say, what? Like, is this real? Like, is this
Right.
really? And and because you're so used to people of faith doing, not surprising you,
Right.
you know.
Yes.
And I have to say that the community of people who follow me surprised me in all the best ways. And
And
so it's and I know that that part of that is based on like because other people really had crappy, terrible, abusive situations that they had to face.
mm-hmm.
And because of what they faced, it opened up doors, it opened up theologies, it opened up people
Right.
start, the allies, the number of allies growing in the Christian community or in the faith community is it's getting, there are more every day. And so
Yes.
big beautiful thing to be able to come out and stand on the shoulders of those people,
Mm-hmm.
board of those, the leaders who have been brave enough to say, I support LGBTQ people. And so and it's so it's been the best part. I told you the hardest part. The best part is just being me, like
Yes.
every single day.
Yes.
And like I get to be me, like, and I am like I celebrate that. And I am blessed to have a one-time spouse who like
Mm.
has been incredibly supportive. Like
Yes.
if I like her grace, like
Mm-hmm.
um,
I think you're so right when you say it's you're almost surprised by grace. And I would say that, to quote the song, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. When you face, or to quote the Bible, you who want to have a life must lose it first. Like when your back is up against the wall of who you are and who other people think that you should be, there is a death of sorts. And you said in one of your quotes on Instagram, which everyone needs to go follow you immediately, Matthew Paul Turner. You said, I've long believed that regardless of what I was feeling or whether those feelings were right or wrong, my survival was built upon hiding, holding on to secrets, and only revealing the parts of me that I deemed acceptable in any given circumstance. If I did those things well, I would be okay. And that almost made me cry. My survival was built upon hiding
yeah,
and secrets. And I think it goes back to what you're talking about, the fear, the fear that you may have felt, but mostly the fear of many of our people of faith, many believers that I know, many Christians that I know and love, many people in your family and or in prior circles as well that are bumping up against their fear. And I wanted to ask you, how do you think that the church has used fear as a tool to keep the LGBTQ community, and specifically those who identify as Christians, in the closet? How do you think the church has used fear in that way?
oh, I mean, like like a like a nuclear bomb.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's even the church has weaponized God so often and to such varying degrees of, awfulness over the years, that it's hard to pinpoint what the church has gotten right, if anything, regarding LGBTQ people. Now, I know I lots of people are going to say that there are lots of denominations. You're absolutely right.
40,000, over 40,000.
Yeah.
So we're not speaking to
There
everyone.
are many denominations that have, come out and support and are
Right.
very, very much affirming, and they celebrate that, and that's wonderful. But when you've been raised in an evangelical / fundamentalist culture, your whole life has been built on a system of ideas. When you were talking about like what I had written on Instagram, I remember in one of my books I wrote something about, at my church, the truth didn't set you free, it only made you lie, because at the end of the day, it was all about people's perspectives. As long as I gave you the perspective that I was okay, that was where freedom came. Because to tell you the truth, you in general, of course, but like to tell people the truth, there was no freedom in that. There was it would only create an environment that would become unsafe for me, or become hostile for me, or become put me at such odds. I mean, even now with my family, the amount of angst that several members of my family feel toward me, it's palpable.
Right.
So I believe that to answer your question directly, I believe that the church's theology and lack of nuance in their ability to reconcile their beliefs with the stories of LGBTQ people, has cost people their lives. I think that it has created a closet within the church that is far bigger than any of us know. I think that it creates depressed and anxious people. And I know that in my coming out, in the course of a month, I probably received, 1,200 emails from people who were in either my exact boat or in similar stories, or still in the closet, wanting. And it's been overwhelming to read the stories of people who are in that and have no way out, and don't have the ability to speak up, and they still feel such palpable fear of what might happen because of their church community. Because let's face it, I'm lucky, I'm privileged, because I have not only people who love me in my own tangible circle, but I have this community of progressive thinkers who follow me and love me, and have taken care of me. The average person in the middle of nowhere, America, doesn't have that. And so when the idea of them speaking up, they still are very much at risk of losing everything. I mean, I've walked, since coming out, I've walked with men and women who have gone through, you know, in my situation, and they've had to tell a spouse that they are gay, and, you know, they're in the process of separating, and I have watched them lose
Right.
everything.
Yeah, and it's that fear that, what I have observed at least, the fear that keeps people quiet about their story is the same fear that the church is feeding from the beginning of time. Adam and Eve. Don't eat the apple, you'll get kicked out. Don't associate with sinners. It's a slippery slope. Don't, be afraid of your body. Don't tempt the men, because then they won't be able to control themselves. Like, it's fear. Don't doubt. Don't ask questions. It's just fear. We're plugged, inundated with fear. And then if fear doesn't work, what I have observed is that they move to shame then, because there's no intellectual capacity to well, not that there's none, but there's often this conflict of allegiance. And so rather than, being brave enough to enter into a conversation, they just resort to shame. And you yesterday, the poor letter from Gabby, can I read it?
No, I don't care.
Because this is to me, and I've walked through my fair amount of shit too, and the hate comes from Christians. The fear, the shame comes from Christians. And poor Gabby says, to you, sir, are no Christian. However, since you claim to be one, then my righteous judgment is okay to do. The Bible says to judge other Christians righteously. You claim to be a Christian, so you should have no issue with me doing this and telling you that you are lying and deceiving others, just as Satan wants you to do. You will join him in the LOF, and he is so happy he has you. Truly repent to the Lord before it's too late. I mean, the LOF, the Lake of Fire, has an acronym?
I know.
Who
like,
knew?
we're reducing the Lake of Fire to the LOF. Like, I mean, like...
Oh my gosh. But I mean, we laugh, but literally, that stuff's hurtful. What do you do with shame? Where do you put it? What do you do with it?
You know what? Like, Gabby's stuff, like, if Gabby's words had really impacted me, I probably wouldn't have posted it. Like, I can let go of other people's projections. You know, I had to work through my own homophobia. Like, my own, I had more than enough homophobia toward myself that I had to work through. I remember sitting down a month after my coming out. I sat down with a new therapist, and I told him the whole story, and he hardly said anything, but he looked at me and he says, you do know that you haven't even begun to accept yourself, right?
Wow.
Because even the positive things that I would say about what was going on in my story, I laced it with words of shame. I laced it, and I slanted it in a negative way with the expectation that people were going to respond negatively. And I had become so, like, it was my habit.
Yeah.
And I'm still working through a lot of that, but it's, once you get past that fear, the shame can start to fall apart pretty easily, because you stop being afraid. And when you stop being afraid, it's a lot harder for people to control you. It's a lot harder for people's words and for their actions to control how you're going to live your day. Like, I can get messages from people like Gabby all day long now, and I can go about, it's not going to mess my day up. A year ago, that wouldn't have been true. A year ago, I would have, like, wanted to retaliate, or I would have had to at least write a pretend letter back to her and maybe not send it, but I needed to get it out of my system. And I think that you with the practice of not being afraid, and again, it is a practice, because, like, fear can come back and haunt you so fast,
right?
Especially religious fear, because, and again, the fear that really hurts us is the fear that is very much ingrained in who we are. And when you're a person, when you grow up in the church, you are like, your very existence is built on a concept that is fear-based. Like this idea that if you don't know Jesus as your personal savior, you're going to burn in hell. That was the hope. That was the best part of
Yeah.
of my entire growing up time. And even that is a message built very much on this: I'm going to scare you into doing what I want you to do or need you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're 4, I mean, I asked Jesus into my heart the first time when I was 4, and many times after.
Right.
And, I mean, like, it's like every time there was like the sermon on hell or communist China or whatever, like, I mean, I would run down the aisle and get saved
Right.
again. Because like the only thing that was the only thing that was scarier than hell for me was communism. And I don't know why, but
Right.
but we were raised in that environment where that was very much a tangible thing that was preached about. And so
Mm-hmm.
it is when when you realize that your whole existence is built on this concept of fear, you like, it took me a little while because I got to a place where I couldn't tell the difference between what was actual faith and what was actually just me being afraid. When
Right.
because like for the most part, I'd lived my life in a situation where I was afraid to be fully me because I was afraid that I would lose everything. I was afraid that I would, lose all my relationships, that I would completely disappoint my family to such a degree that they'd never talk to me again. And that, for part of that time, this eventually changed, but for a part of that time, I really feared hell. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but you start to let go of the fear, and you get brave. And then when you stop being afraid, you stop losing the reasons of what's keeping you in the secret or
Yeah,
keeping you.
it's like the Anais Nin quote that says, "A day came when the risk it took to bloom wasn't as great as whatever it needed to
Right.
have to remain in the bud." I should have looked it up before trying to quote it, but
But that's okay.
um,
I totally like you. It's like the exact opposite of what I'm talking about. It's like the
right,
opposite becomes true, where
right,
the act
exactly.
to not live my truth is the bigger
Mm,
risk than
right.
actually risking all the things that it takes to get to a place where you
Yeah,
get.
and I love your vulnerability when you talk about this feeling of loss because it's very real. And I want to talk about that because one of the most poignant things that you said, and you touched on it a minute ago, to me was, and this is again from your Instagram, you said, "While I have a big community of people who love, affirm, and value me as a gay man, a large number of gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, intersexual, asexual humans do not have this privilege. Instead, which bravo for calling it a privilege, instead, they exist in a world in which their stories are constantly erased or actively avoided, or they have people in their families who constantly try to erase it." Okay. Avoidance and erasure. We have to talk about this because I see the avoidance piece of it in this, well, can't we just agree to disagree posture that many
Or
Christians take.
and there is also a wealth of people whose when you are close to somebody, like, it's like I've still never heard my mom talk to me about being gay. Like, I've never
Mm,
heard her say the word gay
mm,
in relation to me. And so
right,
there is a number of people who can't even utter the words
right,
of their child's story
right.
because of the shame that it puts on them.
Mm-hmm.
And shame begets shame begets shame.
Right.
And so, yeah, no, there is and then, you've got the people who put their kids in, conversion therapy and
Mm.
actually try to erase
Yes.
that part of their story or that part of their being from their personhood.
Right. I've been
So
reading a lot about the erasure of women's stories specifically, but the atrocity of erasing anyone's story is not just reserved for women, but obviously in our Black community, in the disabled
absolutely.
community, in the LGBTQ community. I mean, easy examples are like the fact that women are all but completely omitted from any kind of biblical lineage, or
Right.
the
Yeah.
omittance of entire books of the Bible or modern history right now. But like we know now about individuals such as Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Chopin and Liberace and Emily Dickinson, and we've been given this opportunity to read all of these letters, love letters, and poems to their lovers. And history tried to erase them. They tried to exclude that part of their story. So, how have you seen that play out?
Well,
You touched on it just now.
you bring up how we have changed history in relation to all of those people who we all know as like figureheads in whatever it is, in whatever profession that they are in. We think about, like, I think about Jennifer Knapp, and like Jennifer Knapp is still one of the best songwriters that Nashville knows. And they just created that Jesus Music movie, and from my understanding, is like her story is not included. Her part in the CCM story is not included. Christian music will go out of their way. If it may be a gay thing, they do that. They did it to Ray Boltz. They did it to Jennifer Knapp. I mean, immediately they take your music away from and out of the circulation. They take your CDs off the shelves. They take your music gets recategorized oftentimes as with certain online distributions. So they go out of their way to erase any mention of who you are in that. But even prior to getting to a place where Jennifer was able to come out, like even before that, the amount of drama that I can only imagine somebody like her with this huge career, lots of people depending on her, the amount of gymnastics that the people around her tried to do in order to maintain the story, and we hear that those types of things about other people in our CCM world all the time. Like it's like the one of the secrets of the CCM world, that there's a whole bunch of there's
So true.
gay and LGBTQ people. Like people can't say that there are lots of LGBTQ people in the church. They just aren't out. And so anyway, when you have families and pastors and theologies and friends who go out of their way to either erase you from their life, they might do that, or they try to help you erase the gay part of your story out of your life.
Right.
So there is this, like, it's not just like, I think that if we were to talk to somebody who's walked through this, that they would tell you, if somebody comes out as a teenager in the church, unless they have a really big support group, there's going to be an intervention.
Right.
So it might be gracious compared to what they showed in the Pray Away film on Netflix, but it's still an attempt to create and control the narrative of who this person is.
Right.
because our whole theology says that who they are is shame inducing, or
Right.
who they are should send them running. And that and the shame it's a domino effect, because being gay, like, one of the things I remember my sister telling me is like, you don't understand. Mom has all these people calling her and just crying to her because of you being gay.
Wow.
And so not only did my story get erased in that conversation, but it got replaced by somebody else's shame that they were feeling because of me.
Right.
And that's a real thing that happens in the church world. There's this the domino effect of shame that
Right.
families feel, that,
Right.
oh my gosh, like, think about 15, 20 years ago, when we found out how we felt when we found out that one of our church members was gay. Like, think about even just the shock and awe, the the immediate sense of, oh, I feel so bad
Right.
for the mom and dad. Like, I know, I just know how
Right.
it must be really in a bad, like, it is it's such a degree that it's almost, the shame and the fear and all the negativity is so baked in to the system, that even me, who when I long became affirming for other people, but it took me a long time to become affirming to my own person. But, like, even in my journey, as somebody who was very much had long been accepting of all my gay friends, and and voted in favor of all the things that they could do and be, and even then, the shame that hit me when my sister told me that my mom was crying every single day,
Right.
like, it's baked into me.
Yeah. Well,
And
and it's
it takes generations for something like that. So it is so, like, the hate and the fear is so connected to the church right now, that's why these kinds of conversations are so necessary and so important, because anybody who is able to and willing to speak up, we need to, because I don't know if you know this, but there are a whole bunch of more people in the evangelical community who are actually supportive of LGBTQ people, who would never vote against them, but they do not say it out loud.
Okay, but silence.
I know.
Silence is a death sentence,
Absolutely.
you guys. It is time. It is time. Like, we cannot.
But
it's not. There's.
What I'm saying is that there is so many more people that could.
There are.
So that's why speaking up, and us using our platforms to talk about it, and other people, whoever's willing to use their platform, because it only makes it. We have to create the opposite domino effect, where where the fear and all the things that make people stay in silence, whatever that is for certain individuals, and I'm convinced that the majority of the time it's money. It's churches, and I mean, I know that for a fact, in some ways, that it's, it all comes down to the tithe. Like, if they know, and we've all watched the evangelical churches who have been brave enough to go from non-affirming to affirming,
Right.
and what happened to their congregations, and I mean, it's very few congregations survive it.
Right.
And so the silence is the silence is more dangerous right now than even the people like Gabby who want to
Mm.
go around and proclamate her message.
Yeah,
Because
I think probably for me at least, the fundamental question that I came to terms with was whether or not, because this is what people say, I love you. I just disagree with your lifestyle. I love you. Can you simultaneously love someone and you're not disagreeing? I love Glennon Doyle's comparison. She goes, we're not disagreeing about the weather. You're trying to say that we can disagree about someone's identity. Your identity is not up for debate. Your humanity is not up for debate. No, you cannot say you love me and treat me as less than human. No, you cannot say that you love me and reject my identity. That's not gracious. It doesn't matter how many Jesus loves yous and Bible God frosting you slather all over it. It is not. You are making a very intellectual decision in that moment, and you can't have both. You cannot both practice the kind of American Christianity that continues to oppress, marginalize, exclude, and be violent towards our LGBTQ community while still claiming the unconditional love of Christianity and the doctrine of Imago Dei, which I believe to be the ultimate truth, that we are all made in the image of God, that you carry an imprint of God that I don't carry. That's what makes us unique. That's what makes our communion so vital and so important, is because you carry a picture of God that I don't carry. You're different than me. We're not in competition. We're a collaboration. We're not meant to be uniform to one another. We're meant to be unified. And so I think that what the church has to come down to is this fundamental question. Do I believe in Imago Dei or do I not? Mm. And you better have the courage to say it outright, because you cannot love someone and simultaneously reject someone. Mm-hmm. They're incompatible.
I it's when you're in this world, and I have been in the faith world on some capacity for my entire life. Like, I worked at CCM magazine, worked in the music industry, but then I became a writer, and it is, number one, it thrills me to hear your passion for that and the strength and your and the anger that is fueling it. Like, it's all like, but it's also part of me. Like, I am also so, it's hard to believe. Mm. It's hard to trust that the people that I would love to see do that will ever do it. Mm. Because of the DMs I get. Like, I get so much support in my DMs. Mm-hmm. From people who are important to me, or people who, man, if they spoke up, it would be a big deal. Right. And so I'm still processing what that means, and how to push them, because I'll tell you this, like, my friend Rachel Held Evans, and you certainly are familiar with Rachel and Rachel's work or whatever, and Rachel and I, we came out in favor of LGBTQ rights at a time when it was pretty unheard of for people of faith in the evangelical world to make those kinds of statements. But Rachel and I didn't have a church that we were connected to. Rachel and I didn't have, like, we weren't going home and having to get visits from, like, any members of church boards, or we didn't have tithe. No one was going to be tithing to us. So we took chances, and we had the ability and the freedom and the wherewithal to take those chances at a time when it was unpopular, and we got a whole bunch of pushback. But since then, we have seen the environment in our world change. Like, it's beginning to change.
Yes.
But as we know, when it comes to anything regarding change in the church, like the big church, big C, it is a slow, as it's a shitty slow process. I mean, when we think, when I think about just in regards to women and having authority in a church, when we're still fighting that fundamental thing. There are, I mean, the average evangelical church will not allow a woman to speak in front of a congregation where men are present. Like, preach. They can speak, but preach.
Right.
And it's
unless
hard.
It's children's group.
Oh yeah, children's
It's
group.
fine when it's children's group.
True, absolutely.
I like, what age, what time, what second does it become inappropriate?
That's it. And so, like, while there is hope,
yeah,
we need lots of hope.
Yes.
Because we've got a mountain
yes.
of bullshit to walk through.
Right.
And to push through.
Right.
And it's going to take all of us at various times speaking up and using the influence that we have been given to push the envelope. Because honestly, at the end of the day, there are kids right now in churches who are gay, and their lives are at risk. Right. Because of the environment that they did not choose, but are subject to.
Yes. And mothers and fathers need to ask themselves that. You don't know who your kid is yet. You don't know who your kid is. Absolutely. What are you asking for them to have to overcome by subjecting them to this poisonous message of oppression? And what I want to say too is, like, we look back at slavery and the oppression of blacks in America, which is still happening today. But we look back at slavery and we're like, oh my God, never. No, I would never, ever be a part of the church that was marginalizing the black community.
We all are.
If you are marginalizing the LGBTQ community, you would be a part of the same group of churches, the same group of pastors that now, can you imagine the guilt and remorse that they carry, some of them still being alive, for preaching a doctrine and ideologies that were hurting and killing our black community? The same thing is happening today. And you're very
Don't get me started on LGBTQ people of color, because there's a whole other level of oppression that people of color who are gay and lesbian within the church, especially, they are silenced, they are forgotten, their stories get erased, and I absolutely, like, the church is aiding and abetting oppression, right, on so many levels, against women, against people of color, against immigrants, against different abled people, against LGBTQ people. And at the end of the day, if we all just took the ideas that Jesus spoke about in our approach to how we love people, if we just took that little bit and we made that our mantra, right, that we really could begin to have empathy for the other person. But we have become so focused on our own stuff. we're so focused on our own beliefs, our own how laws affect us, how governments affect us, how mandates affect us, how people coming across the border affect us. Like, we've become so selfish and so self-focused that we are incapable, that there's a large number of people in our church buildings who attend church every single Sunday, that they have no ability to empathize with anyone who does not look like them.
Right.
The ability to become offended is so high because they don't recognize the privilege that they walk in the door with or walk into the conversation with. And
that their stories have been written. Their stories have tested time. Their stories are in the books. Their stories are being taught. You are seen and heard, and it is time for our LGBTQ community to be seen and to be heard. You know, it does feel like this kind of sleeping giant in that way. How have you said once that you began to lose yourself. How have you found yourself again? Like, what are you awakening to?
That I can sit here in this conversation and engage this with you and not be so hyper-focused on making sure my voice doesn't go too squeaky or too high, or making sure I don't, like, trying to control like my eye rolls or whatever that might make me seem whatever to somebody. Like, I don't care about that. I don't give two like, it's so freeing to just get to enjoy being me without being subject to other people's things. And again, most of those things were me. Like, I'm not saying like
right.
You know, once in a while somebody would make a comment or somebody, you know what, but it really, at the end of the day, it was my own homophobia that subjected me to those ideas. And so, like, just waking up and like, I love me again. Like, I really, like, I love me again. And I think that's the thing that I wish my family could see, or get a chance to see, and hopefully maybe one day they will. But like, I mean, I'm still the same person who loves to paint and loves my kids to death, and, you know, bakes really, you know, and loves to cook and all the things, except I'm not hiding behind this layer of self-doubt or like diminishment, or, you know, or self-diminishment, because there was a part of you become so, like, you become so attached to the secret, you diminish yourself.
Yes.
And you don't even recognize it as diminishing yourself.
Right.
It's just how you have to exist every day. So to be like, I've explained it to people. Like, I felt for a long time, I felt like I was walking around in a fog, and the fog is lifted. It doesn't mean that I'm like have only happy days, but I don't have unhappy days living in fog. I have days when I have great days and not so great days, but I have zero fog. The oppression of the fog has lifted. And not having to live under that anymore is a beautiful, powerful, life-giving thing that I hope my kids see, that I hope, like, eventually my family sees. I think my friends see it. And so that has been that's who I found. I found myself again. Like I found the whole Matthew Paul Turner, because there's always been, I mean, I've always been able to present myself, but like I would like doing this, like doing an hour live on Instagram.
Oh my gosh, it's been an hour. I'm so
three years,
sorry.
no, but 3
I'm
years
like 30
ago,
minutes. Just kidding.
I would never have done that 3 years ago. But like, so just doing this and just talking,
Yeah.
and I just, it's fun to get to be me. I never thought I'd ever get to be me. Like, so that's cool.
I love who you are and celebrate who you are. And
And can
I
I
tell
just, no, let me just say this though. I love who you are. I went, you're you are a beautiful, powerful light. Don't let anybody take that away. You don't let anybody take that away. Like you are there. There's something very, very powerful, and God breathed about the spirit that you bring into everything you do. And I have thought that long before you and I ever had a conversation, or long before when you know, like when I started following you, I was like, who is this? Like this beautiful, like artistic, empowering person. So thank you for letting us tell our stories, but thank you for telling yours. Because we need your story as well. And it may not be Women's History Month right now, but it's important that you keep telling your story. And so thank you for that. And I just adore you.
I received that, and thank you so much. I will tell my story when the time is right. And I think every person's story is
absolutely.
It's like simultaneously a victory and a revolt. You know, your story, sharing your truth, telling the world, I will not be erased. Even if you disagree, I'm going to tell you my story.
Yeah.
You know, people that are brave enough, this like totem pole of liberators that have gone before you so that you can sit here today. And
like
affirm
the number of people that I'm standing on their shoulder, like, you know, and it doesn't make it any less scary. But then, but when you jump, and you realize that there's a whole bunch of people there to catch you, that's when you realize, oh my gosh, like I fell down like when I pushed post on that on that thing, I fell down on this couch right here and I wept.
Yeah.
And then my phone started dinging. I mean, and over and over and over again. And I started looking, and it was all these people that I've known for years saying, I just want you to know I love you. Like, I support you. I love you so much. I mean, look, over and over and over again. Wow. And so when you realize, when you take that leap, the leap is so effing scary. But when you do it, you realize that there's somebody there to catch you, and that you don't lose everything. Like, it's...
You know what I think we're caught by when we jump? I think we're caught by grace.
Yeah.
We're caught by the grace.
That's
all
it.
Right.
Hey.
I want to read read my favorite part.
Absolutely.
From your book. And thank you everyone who has stuck with us and who's been here watching, and I just love you guys so much, and it brings so much joy to my heart that you're meeting Matthew, and please follow him and support him. This is from his book, What is God Like? And you say, whenever you aren't sure what God is like, think about what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel brave, and what makes you feel loved. That is what God is like. And I have to tell you that I would add to that your story the way that you have loved your family, the way that Jessica has loved you, the way that you have protected your family, protected your children, and allowed them to see your fullness. That is the very face of God coming out of the blur and into focus. So thank you so much for your words. And are you going to write us a book? Like for, I mean, are you going to write us an adult version of this too?
Right? I mean, that book is as much for like I mean, that book is as much for adults as it is for children. I mean, in some cases, it's more so, but I love to see the healing that
Yes.
people experience, because on one hand, this is the power of a children's book. On one hand, it's giving our kids a new story, but and in the process of that, it's healing our own stories, because there's a lot of people who are raising kids right now that their story, regardless of where, you know, whoever they are, if they're deconstructing or they're, you know, leaving church or like whatever, there's so many different varying levels of where people are. And so to see a book connect with not only the adults but the kids, but to proactively giving the kids a new story and healing the parents' story, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And
So beautiful.
and can I end with one thing?
Yes.
In my first children's book, there's a part in it, and I hope that parents take this and they repeat this over and over and over again to their kids. And it says, you, when God sees you, God delights in what is and sees only what's true. That you, yes, you, in all of your glory, bring color and rhythm and rhyme to God's story. So be you, fully you, a show-stopping review. Live your life in full color, every tint, every hue. Discover, explore, have faith, but love more, and learn and relearn all that God made you for. And I probably wouldn't have been able to say that I wrote that for me at the time that I was writing it, but I wrote it for every gay kid in church, hoping that they would see it and connect to it and find the wink in the middle of the story, in hopes that they know that they're not alone. So,
Thank you so much.
thank you. Thank you for letting
All
me
of my
there.
love to you.
Absolutely. And I hope that we get to do this again.
Yes,
All right.
please. Love you, everyone.
Alrighty.
Bye.
Bye-bye.